OECD AI principles in 2019. But the challenge, or a major challenge, has always been turning that principle into something that's operational, that's comparable, and that's genuinely useful for policymakers and for the public, as well as the companies, in fact. And so the Hiroshima AI process, which was launched under Japan's presidency of the G7 in 2023, was a major step forward in improving transparency. And at the center is a code, the International Code of Conduct for developers of advanced AI systems. And that code sets expectations from governments to developers of advanced AI systems across the AI system lifecycle. And I'm very pleased that Yoichi Ida, who is really the critical force, the momentum behind the Hiroshima AI process and shaped this work, so we're lucky to have him with us today. So to show, or then the following year, to help organizations show how they implement the code in practice, the OECD worked with developers, a number of which are here too, pointing to no one, researchers and civil society, to create the Hiroshima reporting framework. And that's the first international voluntary and comparable mechanism for organizations to demonstrate how they manage AI risks and uphold accountability. And so far, we've received the submissions from 25 organizations across 9 countries. They're all publicly available at oecd.ai/Hiroshima. And today we'll discuss a little bit about what we've learned, how shared reporting practices can complement oftentimes different national approaches, and importantly, where this reporting framework is heading next. So before turning to our panelists, I'll maybe give you... Okay. I was going to give you a brief preview of what's coming, of what we're planning for the HYPE Reporting Framework 2.0. And I was going to show you, but I think that I'm not going to show you because I think I will talk you through it. Just a few of the key points from this Hiroshima 2.0, which will be more comparable and aggregable data. Second, we've linked the reporting interface directly with the OECD.ai catalogs of tools for trustworthy tools and metrics for trustworthy AI, which is also online at oecd.ai/. Over 700 tools, so the major tools and metrics that are hosted on the platform. And so when organizations describe their practices, as well, the reporters can suggest new tools directly from within the interface. So that also means the catalog itself stays up to date and grows with every reporting cycle. So this integration is also helpful for smaller or less well-resourced companies because it helps them find and learn about state-of-the-art tools and others that others are already using, and the reporting itself becomes a way to share good practices between companies of all sizes. And third, work is also underway to update the framework alongside technological evolutions and tailor reporting to organizations' rules across the AI lifecycle. So, for example, the first round focused on developers largely, and now deployers such as Infosys and others are part of the reporting framework. And with that, as I said, we expect to release the new version in the Q2 of this year. We're launching a pilot. We hope to launch a pilot in March, and we'll be organizing information sessions to help organizations get familiar with the new format, and especially give us feedback on what we need to fix, what doesn't work. So keep an eye out for that. So with this context in mind, let me turn to introduce our panelists. So first we have to the right, to my right, your right, Yoichi Ida, Minister's Special Policy Envoy at Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, otherwise known as MIC, who has been at the heart of the Hiroshima process from day one, as I said. We have Paula Goldman next to him, who is Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer at Salesforce, very important in particular for SMEs, but for all companies of all sizes. We have Paula Goldman, who's Joël Pinault, who's Chief AI Officer at Cohere, and Amanda Craig, General Manager of the Office of Responsible AI at Microsoft. And I also want to acknowledge the contribution of Infosys, with whom we were co-organizing this workshop today, and in particular of Ashish Tiwari, who's worked really closely with us, the team at the OECD, in preparing this session. And also in helping us with the V2 that's underway. So, and Infosys was also the first organization in India to submit a Hiroshima AI process report. So, and we hope not the last. So, even though he wasn't able to join us today, we really, really appreciate his contribution and that of Infosys. So, thanks for all being here, and let's dive in. So I'll start with Yoichi. Yoichi, Japan's championed the Hiroshima AI process from the start and has been instrumental in setting up and growing a parallel initiative very closely associated called the Hiroshima AI Process Friends Group. What has been most encouraging to you based on other countries' interest in the reporting framework?
Thank you very much, Karin, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yoichi Ida, kindly introduced by the moderator now, and I was chairing the G7 working group and also Hiroshima process working group when G7 agreed on this framework. So in the beginning, we discussed and agreed on this framework in G7, but let me a little bit go back to the previous history. We started the discussion, international discussion on AI governance in the year 2016 together with OECD, and we worked all through the process up down to 2026 until now. The OECD has been the great partner for us. We agreed OECD AI principles in 2019 and also G20 AI principles. And India was a great partner in that discussion when we discussed G20 AI principles. After that, we were very happy to see, some of the kind of coherent recognition or but in the year 2022, before we took the G7 presidency once again after 2016, we saw a kind of diversification of approaches across countries between US and EU were spreading out. So we wanted and that was why we took up this topic in G7 in the year 20 generative AI. So after following the rapid rise of generative AI, we started the discussion on Hiroshima process. And the intention of the discussion was we wanted to share how we can promote coherent and consistent governance frameworks across different jurisdictions. So now, as mentioned by the moderator, we are running Hiroshima process reporting. We wanted to share how we can, along with promote coherent and consistent Hiroshima process governance frameworks across more than different jurisdictions. Governments are gathering together with more than 30 private sector organizations. We are running Hiroshima process reporting framework. So in principle, with that, we are also running Hiroshima process. We are having the next important meeting in Tokyo next month. Governments are gathering together with more than 30 private sector organizations. More than 30 private sector people are gathering to discuss how we can promote growing very rapidly coherent. And we are having the next in-person meeting in Tokyo next month. And there will be more than different countries, government people, and also more than 30 private sector people are gathering to discuss how we can promote every jurisdictions have different conditions, interoperable AI governance. So in the details, we have to add different differences we and diversification approaches. Still, we want different to share every country, every jurisdiction have different value-based, different backgrounds, and so in the details we have to admit the differences and the diversifications. But still, we wanted one thing. I was very happy with now value-based I saw, and that was what Hiroshima process is providing, not only from the government but also from private sector. One thing I was very happy with discussing the AI governance, many and also joining not only from the government but also from private experiences and understanding and also the challenge AI governance and also joining us interoperability, share their experiences and understanding, and also the challenges and encouraging interoperability and common understanding on AI governance. So that is the most
thank you, Yoichi.
Encouraging element.
I have a follow-up question for you, which is that last year we received many, the first round of company submissions for you, which is that last year we received many, the first round of company submissions, not just companies but largely some key insights from that report last September. We published and I wanted to ask you what from that report last the first round, and I wanted to ask you what lessons did for policymakers thinking about transparency for policymakers thinking about transparency for advanced AI systems.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was exciting to see more than 20 companies more than 20 companies submitted their reports. And then how we can make use of them. At this moment, government, for policymakers, it is still challenging to understand everything in the report. This must be containing a lot of abundant information to leverage, but in many cases, we need a lot of effort to understand, to reflect all those, the disclosed information, very important information into policy making. So we need capacity building effort, not only for the government people, but also for all AI stakeholders, including ordinary users and citizens, because this voluntary framework needs to be promoted by multi-stakeholder collaboration. All different players need to increase literacy in AI governance. So one of the major challenges how we can promote capacity building government, including government officials, reflect outcomes and achievements through reporting framework into policy making.
Thank you very much, Yoichi. I think that part of that comes is a message also to us to clarify some of the key points, and not get into too many details, which we do tend to do. We love the details, but we need to bring up the key points, the salient orientations for public policy. But thank you for that. My next I'll turn to Amanda from Microsoft. And Microsoft was among the first to submit a very comprehensive and detailed one. And question for you is what did that process reveal internally about how Microsoft is operating? What trustworthy AI? What did it trigger? How did it shape the way your teams think about managing risks within the company?
Thank you. And it's a really good question, and it's one that I think is important to answer. Thinking about the value that served us at Microsoft internally, as part of a broader context for the value that we see. The reporting framework actually serving the wider ecosystem. Because what really helps us and what we learn through the process there's a real value in always going deeper to have a shared understanding of language, a shared understanding of what the implementation of practices really looks like within Microsoft. Very many different product groups with different functions, right? But we have the same need in the broader ecosystem. And so what I would offer is from Ida-san we heard the kind of timeline that we've been on as working on AI governance. And I think it's important to take a step back and still in the relatively early days. And even if you think about from 2016 the technology itself has changed so much in that decade. And so as we have been in the early days of defining governance, really getting into detail of what the details mean in practice, the technology keeps evolving. And so we're in the early days, it's a very iterative conversation. What do we mean by these governance norms? How do we really practice, and how do we really drive that common understanding? So one example I could offer from our experience at Microsoft and responding to the providing a report under the framework. There's a real difference between on paper a risk management framework describes the risk management process for any organization in practice you're implementing them. And it necessarily has some distance, right? On paper it sort of looks like a sequential process. We're going to identify risk, evaluate it, and we're going to mitigate it. And in practice, of course, that's very iterative. And also the methods for doing that risk assessment, that risk mitigation. There's a lot of commonality, but there's also some difference, right? Just in terms of the specific technology or scenario that you're looking at. That's something that where you have that kind of risk management framework that really drives that internal conversation internally where there are differences and why, where there is commonality and that's just deepening the conversation. And that's again just something that I would connect to the value of the framework as well in the broader ecosystem.
Thanks, Amanda. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. I have another question for you as we're deeply engaged in working on V2.0 as the reporting framework. And Microsoft operates across the entire AI life cycle, cloud compute with end user applications. And I think the question for you is, what do you see the greatest opportunity for this new reporting framework more integrated, covering all the different life cycle stages? How do you see that as an opportunity to foster trust beyond just the developer level, and to include the application level that's more and more relevant?
Thank you. Yes, and I'm really excited about the direction of, as you call it, and really allowing us to work on these different parts of the value chain and what transparency and practice looks like for these various parts of the value chain. I think it actually relates to where we started with this opportunity to drive common understanding, shared language for how we do risk management across the broader ecosystem. And I think still relatively early days of defining all of that, having a shared understanding of it. Right now, a lot of organizations internally implementing AI governance, and there's been an effort to start to define shared understanding of how organizations should implement AI governance across different parts. For example, this is what model developers should do. What application developers should do. Some expectations for deployers. But what we really need is a really holistic, cohesive conversation about how all that works together. And I think it's really different than some traditional sort of because in AI, we have really dynamic components integrated, and we see that today, and that drives a lot of common understanding in a really sort of iterative way. And it's obviously going to get even more important with agentic AI, right? And so there's just this really big opportunity now to work on seeing the kind of connections across the value chain, what we have as expectations for developers versus deployers, and really seeing where there are gaps, maybe where there's work to do, and making sure that all the actors in the value chain have information they need to be able to make their own risk decisions. And so it's a really good opportunity going forward with 2.0. And I actually have been really excited to see that there's been so much shared recognition that this is exactly what we need, right? To provide greater clarity through the value chain, really as a foundation for trust and trusted adoption.
Thanks, Amanda. And that point about the trust and transparency across the entire AI system lifecycle and value chain is really important. I think it connects well with Salesforce perspective, because Salesforce is you're working with clients across multiple geographies, multiple types of clients, and multiple sizes of organizations. And do you think a shared reporting system, you have actually, I know you do, but maybe you could elaborate on how you think a shared reporting system could, like this one, can help structure some of the conversations that you have with your own clients, because you have, we talk a lot about SMEs, but we can go through to SMEs directly, but that's very difficult. But in fact, many of these SMEs are going to be adopting AI via Salesforce and other comparable tools.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And also I want to just start by saying thank you for the leadership that went into the Hiroshima framework and its continued iteration. It's really, really important. And I think sometimes when we're asked about at Salesforce why we care about these frameworks, it helps to sort of take a step back and talk about why it's not just the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do for business, right? To have these shared frameworks. So for those of you who well, just to say a little bit about Salesforce. So we, as you noted, we provide agentic AI technology to businesses and organizations of all sizes, so from small businesses to very large ones. And within that, for a variety of different functions, from sales to service to marketing and so on. And I'm in my role, part of what my team does is to test all of our products before they go out to market and make sure that our AI is working the way it should, and to give and design controls for customers to be able to understand what's going on and observe what's going on and make adjustments. And when our customers come to us, as they do, and they say, how do I know whether I can trust this product? Well, we walk them through all of the work that we've done. But it is much better to be able to say, here's this shared language, as you were just talking about. Here's this shared framework that we have globally. It's not just us making it. It's a whole bunch of different organizations, governments, companies, nonprofits, and so on. And we're speaking the same language. And it's very, very important, because then it's not just one company grading its own homework, it's a shared framework around how risk gets managed. So that's point one. The second point that I want to make is, obviously, things are very, very dynamic in the market right now, right? The technology is moving at an incredible pace. And the regulatory frameworks are also shifting dynamically. And so in that kind of environment, having this framework that's adaptable, that as the technology evolves, we're able to adapt the framework with it, becomes all the more crucial, because regulation is very important. And also, once it's codified, hard to change. But frameworks can adapt as the technology evolves. And so I think it's just a critical part of the equation.
Thanks, Paula. I'd like to take you up on that one, on that last point about the pace of evolution, and particularly ask you about how do you see agentic AI developments reflected in a framework like the Hiroshima AI reporting framework?
Yeah, well, I guess I would say a few things there. First, I just want to plus one your earlier comment, Amanda, about the sort of importance of the evolution, even before we get to agentic, the importance of having different sets of standards around transparency and risk management for different parts of the ecosystem, right? So again, at Salesforce, we do develop our own models, but we're an open platform, and we work with all the major AI providers, and we're also putting agentic systems on top of those models, right? And so our set of requirements and what we do is going to be different than if we're just simply developing a model, right? I think having the shared understanding of what's the model provider's responsibility, what's our responsibility, what is our customer's responsibility, to your point, right? That's also a key part that I think bears further elaboration, key part of the whole process. And that provides the building block for when, as is happening now, as we are adopting agent systems at scale within businesses. So just to paint a picture, okay, so we do customer service AI as one of our verticals. So if you have a customer service AI agent handling inquiries, you want to know, and you've delegated to that AI agent that it's going to be doing so autonomously, our customers want to know what's our responsibility in developing that, and what are the tools we provided them so that they can execute on their part of the responsibility. Fast forward, you have a customer service AI agent interacting with someone else's customer service agent. Those two agents need to be able to speak to each other, and that whole thing needs to be auditable and governable and so on. If we don't have these building blocks in place, how do we get to those, right? And it's very, very important that we're adapting those standards quickly. Again, to the point of this ever-changing environment, it's not just a nice to have. It is critical to unlocking adoption at scale for the agent-to-agent economy.
Thank you, Paola. And the point about agentic AI and agents communicating and being able to communicate with each other is one I expect we'll hear a lot about this year. So turning to Joël, as someone building and shipping these systems at Cohere, which is a Canadian company, if Sorry, for those who don't know, Cohere, based in Quebec. Sorry, little technical issue. I wanted to start by asking you about, as varying regulations for AI are proposed or enter into force around the world, what value do you see in these voluntary reporting international frameworks for companies operating globally, and in this case, one that's accompanied by an actual reporting framework?
Thank you, and pleasure to be here with this panel today. I'm going to pick up in particular on the word international here. We have several companies operating on the global stage represented on this panel, and that definitely poses a challenge today. Given the current geopolitical situation, I think it's getting increasingly harder to land on regulatory frameworks on which we would agree. So frankly, voluntary commitments can serve that purpose of essentially getting the whole community, in particular across enterprise, to adhere to similar commitments and similar practices. Even though regulation may take longer to come into play, we're seeing a lot of fragmentation on the regulatory side between the EU, between what's happening in the US and Asia and so on, for various reasons. And so through voluntary commitment, we actually can evolve towards common standard, which in general is a good thing in terms of transparency. It's a good thing in terms of people understanding what AI actually does, how their data is used, what are the properties of the model. And frankly, it's a good thing in terms of accelerating innovation from an economic point of view for companies who do operate on the global scale. And in particular, up-and-coming companies such as Cohere, it certainly reduces the burden to have a common framework. So I think from that point of view, it is much more feasible to have international alignment when we go with voluntary commitments in the current situation. It does take leadership at the global scale, and that's where I really salute the work that the OECD is doing, the leadership of Japan in bringing us together. That leadership has to be there for this work to happen. But nonetheless, it gives us a lot of flexibility. I think my co-panelists talked about the question of agility, faster adaptation. It's absolutely crucial if we look at where AI was just 3 years ago versus today. This is on a completely different time scale than the one in which we're able to land regulation on an international frame. So we just have to be pragmatic about that. The last point I will make is, through these voluntary commitments, in many cases for enterprises, there's an opportunity to reinforce trust with the public, and when done well, that actually reinforces the competitiveness of these enterprises. Especially, Cohere is an enterprise that delivers enterprise AI solutions that have high guarantees in terms of confidentiality, privacy, security. And so our ability to adhere to these kinds of frameworks actually gives a lot of credibility to the product that we're building and to the innovation strategy. And we're not alone in this respect. I suspect many up-and-coming companies benefit from that. So overall, I don't think this is a substitute for regulation, but I think there's actually a lot of reasons why it makes business sense to do so, and it's good for customers and citizens as well.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, and I also think that it can help inform policy, because the evolution is so rapid, as you say, that policy needs to be informed by those evolutions. And what do they mean? We're back at sort of the point we made earlier on. I also wanted to ask you how this kind of reporting framework can support better engagement between AI developers and policymakers, because we have groups. They're linked, and they're somewhat separate and somewhat linked. And I think both are important, that they be somewhat separate, so that those conversations can happen in trust and open conversations on both sides between different communities. But then they'll come together. They do come together, but not always. So that when progress has been made, real progress, then it gets presented to policymakers. Policymakers take time and react to it, and so on. But first there is that consensus building on both sides on what's important to us as a community.
And I suspect, you talk about the conversation between the people who develop the technology and the policymakers, but I think even within a lot of organizations, certainly my own company, probably that of my co-panelists, that conversation happens even within the organization. So we have, frankly, it can be pretty siloed. What are the teams that are developing the technology, the teams that are handling the government affairs, public policy types of topics? And so this type of work has to bring all of these stakeholders to the table together. The ability to have these conversations about, what are the trends in terms of the technology, to articulate the capabilities and the risks of this technology in a way that speaks beyond just the language of engineering and computer scientists is very important. And so that gives us an opportunity to develop that common language, to develop that common understanding of what it is. And similarly, I've worked for many years with model developers who don't always have the same frameworks to think about how to put guardrails around their models, to think about how to develop them in a way that's responsible, that meets some specific commitments. I've had a chance to see a lot of that work in the context of open sourcing AI technology. And so because you are leaning into a process that has, of course, an intent to be very transparent, but it doesn't mean that open sourcing a model, is sufficient in terms of transparency. So it gives us an opportunity to really lead these discussions internally and then take them out externally with a broader community. I will also point out that for a lot of organizations, you do need to develop more internal maturity with respect to these governance processes. We didn't have these kinds of AI models just a few years ago. We haven't had the chance to evolve as organizations, and so through voluntary commitments, we have often, new functions that are established, new processes that are established. It gives us the time to build that maturity internally that will then set us up to be much more responsive to long-term regulation.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think we're running a little tight on time. I'd like to have a round of lightning sort of interventions, sort of 1 minute maximum for each of you before we open up the floor to the audience. So my question is, as we've been discussing, we're developing this version 2, which I'd hope to show, but it'll come. You'll see it soon enough. Of the HYPE reporting framework version 2, and looking ahead, what in your view is the one concrete improvement, whether it's procedural, technical, or policy related, that you think would make the framework more useful for UHE, your country, or the group of countries, or for your companies?
Okay, thank you very much. Quickly, because this is whole voluntary framework, everything is voluntary. So we need a kind of incentive mechanism where the organizations who submitted the report can benefit from their action, voluntary actions. Otherwise, people will leave the framework. They made a lot of effort, and then there should be some feedbacks from as trust from the market, or trust from the government, trust from the investors. This type of positive cycle as incentive mechanism should be implemented or accommodated into this whole structure, and we government need to make more effort to realize this type of incentive in this framework.
Thanks, Yuichi. Paula?
I guess I'll just reiterate one of the things I already said, which is I think the clarity of the different responsibilities of different actors within the ecosystem, just like security is a shared responsibility between the entities that create technology and the entities that use technology. It's the same here. And I think that just needs to get much clearer, much more quickly.
Thank you, Joy.
I will offer that I think it's important that we're very thoughtful about how do we increase the multicultural aspect and the accessibility aspect of this technology. Right now, it's a technology that's developed in relatively few places in the world, and yet the technology is being deployed at scale across the planet, rapidly so. And so having an opportunity to build in considerations of accessibility, multilinguality, multicultural aspects into that is, I think, going to be important.
And last but not least, Amanda.
Thank you. I think the one thing I would say is I hope that going forward we continue from a process point to see this as a living framework that we can continue to iterate on. I think the first version has served us very well in starting this conversation and starting this work. I think the next steps to really think about the roles across the value chain and figure out how to do that in practice. I know that you have been doing a lot of work in that regard already, but it's not trivial to figure out this sort of seamless way to figure out, especially when actors sit across multiple roles in the value chain, how to actually enable that through a seamless reporting sort of function. So that's work still to do. And the work around sort of showing the direction that you're going on, not just having the unstructured open field data, but accompanying that with the kind of more structured data that's going to allow for comparability, that's going to allow for really consensus best practices to emerge. Those are all good steps. But the real value of this framework is that we can continue to build on that. Right? As the technology continues to evolve, as agentic AI emerges, there are going to be new sort of questions and new needs that we're able to sort of work on through this framework. And so that's really the opportunity. And then I would be really, really remiss to not call out, there was a really interesting report published last month by Brookings at CDT. We have Elham and Cam in the room. And that has a lot of really good insights into ways that we could improve the framework going forward too.
Thanks, Amanda. And yeah, I echo that. And we've taken a lot of notes from that report. So expect to see that reflected in the second round. So now I'd like to open up the floor for questions from the floor.
Okay, my name is Dr. Patnaik. I live in Mumbai. So my question to you, any one of you can answer. How would OECD is going to help large emerging market like India, Brazil, and Indonesia in terms of AI tech adoption?
I think that's a question to the moderator, but we were actually asking for questions to the panelists, but that's okay. Actually, the OECD is the secretariat for an initiative called the Global Partnership on AI, which is already quite a bit broader than the OECD membership itself. Even the OECD itself has its members, but a lot of participants that are not members. But the Global Partnership on AI is an initiative that has at present 46 countries standing on equal footing, which include India. India is very committed to the Global Partnership on AI, or GPAI as we call it, as is Brazil, as is Argentina, as are other current members, and in some in Africa, across all continents today. And we have already 5 applicants that will probably become members very shortly. So this is a growing sort of membership, and I think from the OECD, the OECD is just the secretariat for this initiative. But beyond that, of course, the real force is not the OECD. The OECD and the GPAI are just groupings of countries. But the countries themselves are taking great initiative, and that's where Yoichi Japan's initiative and the friends of the Hiroshima AI process have said are so important, and already has, as Yoichi was saying, has I think 60 or close to 61 countries, but it keeps growing. So I don't expect it to stop because Yoichi is very dedicated to it and is working very hard. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, but the time is over. So any questions you have, you can ask the panelists outside. And the panelists, you guys have to come together for a photo. And I'm so sorry, but that's the whole procedure right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
No problem.